Little late, but good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hey, y'all. Good morning. Oh, man. Thought I had my glasses cleaner down here, and I don't. Let's see if we can get a better little. My bun is making it. Hey, good morning, everyone. I apologize for the late start. I have to be in community 3 times this morning, and my. So we're here in the clearing at right now. We are here at PRC right now. We will go to the clearing at 9 and over to the Open Door Church at 10 a.m. So I'm going to just go ahead and put the Zoom here for those who want to come. This is to the Open Door Church. They didn't say I couldn't share, but I didn't see where they do share openly. But I'm just going to put it here so that I'm going to put it on YouTube. Give me a second. YouTube, just because 3, 5. Hold on. Okay, give me a second. Okay, so excuse me. Let me copy this right quick and get it over here to YouTube. All right, so to be clear, this is the link for the Open Door Church. This is not the link to the clearing. Only those who are subscribers now to the clearing receive the Zoom link to the clearing, okay? If you are interested in I think that I'm missing a, hold on, y'all. Yeah, there we go. If you are interested in becoming a subscriber to the clearing, Devon, let me know if you receive the emails. I'm hoping you are. If you haven't, shoot me an inbox or something so I can get it to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And let me just put this link here for those of you who are interested in subscribing to our clearing community. So there are 2 links you have, right? This link is for those who want to subscribe to the clearing community. You can go do that right now, and the clearing will give me about 5 minutes to just go and see if anyone new has joined so that I could get you the link. If there are those of you, I'm coming to you right now, YouTube. If there are those of you who want to join and you want just to subscribe annually, just let me know, send me a DM or something, and I can give you the correct link for that. This link that I'm putting up now is monthly. Good morning. Okay, so you have 2 links. One is for the Open Door Church, which begins at 10 a.m. Eastern Time today. The other is for those who desire to subscribe to the clearing. Ashe, please tag someone as I'm late. I'm going to tag my good friend Ronald Galvin because I want to make sure that he is in, and I know he inboxed me. So I'm tagging RG. Tag the folk that you don't see who are here, to let them know we are here late, but we are here. So I want to get right to, we have some announcement. Uh-oh. Hey, Terrace, I did not mean to. Okay. All right. We have some announcements that I want to offer you this morning for your review. The first is that the Dogon site teaching with Dr. Itihari Toure and Dr. Renee Harrison has been postponed, has been rescheduled to November 9th. The Dogon site teaching offered by Ancestral Wisdom Waters by Dr. Itihari Toure and Dr. Renee Harris, is rescheduled to November 9th. So please move accordingly with that. I am preaching. I did not upload that picture, that poster, but I am preaching at 10 a.m. at the Open Door Church today at 11 a.m. From 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on YouTube Live. And there is a Zoom link. Will be the celebration of life for Dr. Matulu Shakur today. Good morning, everyone. Today, August 6, 2023, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., there is a live link on YouTube and Zoom for Baba Dr. Matulu Shakur's celebration of life. I invite you to join. Good morning. Good morning to all of you whose names I've not been able to see or say because I am late. Good morning, all. I want to get right to it. I want to, this is a reflection, an open reflection, just some thoughts, unfinished as they may be. I think that it is well worth our opportunity to engage in this way. Again, we will be doing some more in-depth work in the clearing and in our private Facebook group, The Clearing, throughout the week, throughout the month. So I again invite those of you who are interested in doing this work with us and joining our community to subscribe. So this morning's scripture comes from the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 3. The book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 3. Remember those who are in prison as though you were in prison with them, those who are being tortured as though you yourself were being tortured. I want to read it again. Remember those who are in prison as though you were in prison with them. Remember those who are being tortured as though you yourself were being tortured. Ashe. This reflection is entitled The Spirit of Ubuntu. The Spirit of Ubuntu. The spirit of Ubuntu is to be humane, Ashe. It is to be humane. It is to ensure that human dignity is always at the core of our actions, our thoughts, and deeds when interacting with each other. Ubuntu sounds good in theory, but its practice is thwarted by post-traumatic slave syndrome, rooted in false constructs to negate the humanity and thus sacred worth of the souls and bodies of Black folk. Black bodies signify a history of conquest, enslavement, lynching, and rape, and this history is marked on the body by contrary figures of triumph and terror, overexposure, and invisibility. From the arrival of Africans in America, African bodies were viewed as part of the wealth to be conquered. The Black body was viewed as a material good in the eyes of the slave traders and a forfeiture of redemptive possibilities in the eyes of white Christian missionaries. Conquest and commodification dehumanized and separated materiality of the body from the soul of the body. Historically, in this country and in the countries that commissioned their capture, black folk were and are not considered human. To build this myth of black inferiority, an entry in the Britannica Encyclopedia reads, quote, a number of 18th century political and intellectual leaders began publicly to assert that Africans were naturally inferior and that they were indeed best suited for slavery. A few intellectuals revived an older image of all living things, the scale of nature or the great chain of being, to demonstrate that nature or God had made men, in this citation, unequal. This ancient hierarchical paradigm, encompassing all living creatures, starting with the simplest organisms and reaching to humans, angels, and ultimately to God, became for the advocates of slavery a perfect reflection of the realities of inequality that they had created. The physical differences of blacks and natives became the symbols of markers of their status. And it was during these times that the term race became widely used to denote the ranking and inequality of these peoples. In other words, their placement on the chain of being, end quote. Racial stereotyping, quote, of Africans was magnified by the Haitian Rebellion in 1791. This heightened the American fear of slave revolts and retaliation, causing greater restrictions and even harsher and more degrading treatment. Grotesque descriptions of the low status races, blacks and natives, were widely publicized, and they helped foster and fear loathing. This negative stereotyping of low status racial populations was ever present in the public consciousness, and it affected relations among all people. And by the mid 19th century, race in the popular mind had taken on a meaning equivalent to species level distinctions, at least for differences between blacks and whites. The ideology of separateness that this proclaimed difference implied was soon transformed into a social policy, end quote. The readers then, along with the writer here in Hebrews, they were second generation believers, having been baptized and fully instructed. According to Fred Craddock, the writer of the Hebrew section of the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary, quote, they had been believers long enough to have become teachers, but had been stunted in their growth, end quote. They were experiencing a collective faith crisis. Craddock reports that, quote, there are a number of factors for this crisis. One is the delay of the final return of Christ, which may have had a demoralizing effect on the community, end quote. As a result, some believers returned to Judaism for the security of long and established tradition or for government protection from persecution. Meaning some of them grew a little weary. Some of them could no longer withstand the persecution. And so they turned to what they knew. They went back to what they were comfortable with. They went back to what they knew with the hopes of, with the belief that they would receive protection. My. Yeah. Protection. Let's keep going. And in this, that this notion that Jesus was coming back, because Jesus had not come back immediately, as the writers and even as Paul had suggested or hoped, that this apocalyptic ending where the breakers would dash and the sky would crack open, that the believers in that day believed that he was coming back immediately, at least in their lifetime. And so when that did not happen, it had a kind of demoralizing effect, a kind of ashamed and embarrassing effect on those who had chosen the way as their main belief system. Those that remained believers faced then these extreme circumstances. Some members had been imprisoned and others suffered. Oh my goodness. Others suffered the confiscation of their property. Additional root causes were social, political, and economic. Daily, they face the problem of suffering dishonor as followers of one who endured the same, the cross. To this end, many grew lax in attendance at their assembly meetings, and their commitment to the way waned. Craddock concludes, quote, that the writer's lengthy and carefully argued Christological presentation. Christology is Christ talk. So if theology is God talk, then Christology is the way that we talk about Jesus the Christ, the way that we understand and or believe in Jesus the Christ. And depending on folks' lenses, their theological premise, and or social location, our Christologies can be different. Some of us have a high Christology, where our participation and our belief in the way is rooted and based in Jesus's death, Jesus's crucifixion, Jesus's resurrection, and his return. That he is the one who comes to save. There are others who have what we identify as a low Christology, meaning it can mean anything from their understanding of the divinity or humanness of Jesus, and or Jesus's placement and where they place Jesus in their practice of the way. Ashe. So what the commentator here is saying is that the writer of Hebrews, because of what this community is facing, is writing this very lengthy Christological presentation. And this presentation, he suggests, strongly implies that at the heart of the crisis, at the heart of the crisis of the people in Hebrews, was a Christology that was inadequate for their social context. I love this. I love this. I love this. He's saying that at the heart of what's going on with them is that maybe their Christology was the problem. Craddock says that perhaps they had a Christology that was long on divinity but short on humanity. Yes. I hope that's hitting somebody. That maybe they had a Christology that was long, because we can be so heavenly minded. No earthly good. Had a Christology that was long on divinity, but short on humanity. The intention then of the writer is to reaffirm their identity as followers of Jesus. Notice the writer of Hebrews doesn't talk a lot about Christ. Come on, Dr. Jacqueline Grant, Black women's Jesus, white women's Christ. But the writer talks a lot about Jesus. So it could be that we are seeing the writer's Christology as he identifies Jesus, which is commonly identified with the humanity of Jesus. And when folk identify Jesus as the Christ, it is akin to the divinity of Jesus. Ashe. So again, the intention is to reaffirm their identities as followers of Jesus, to encourage them to stay with their faith community, to regularly offer the sacrifice of praise to God, to provoke one another to love, and to identify through compassion and sharing with those members who are imprisoned and tortured. This brings us to our focal verse. Remember those who are in prison as though you were in prison with them. Those who are being tortured as though you yourselves are being tortured. Remember, as in do not forget. Do not forget about those who are being mistreated. Friends, we have commenced Black August. And Black August is a time to honor and commemorate the lives and deaths of fallen freedom fighters. According to Mama Ayana Mashama, quote, the contemporary roots of Black August can be found in the actions of Jonathan Jackson, who was gunned down outside the Marin County, California courthouse on August 7th, 1970, as he attempted to liberate three imprisoned black liberation fighters, James McLean, William Christmas, and Ruchell McGee. Ruchell, who is still in prison in California, also was the former co-defendant of Angela Davis, and most of his time in prison has been spent in solitary confinement in the SHU in Pelican Bay. On January 13th, 1970, W.I. Nolan was assassinated when he was shot to death by prison guards on the yard in California's Soledad State Prison. George Jackson, the older brother of Jonathan Jackson, was assassinated 1 year and 14 days after his baby brother Jonathan Jackson by San Quentin guards for his revolutionary leadership. To destroy the growing prison resistance movement, Qatari Gaulden was murdered by San Quentin prison guards August 1st, 1978. Gaulden was one of the key intellectual architects of the Black August commemorative tradition. The intent then amongst those, according to Mama Ayana, the intent amongst those of us, she says, who commemorated and practiced Black August was to educate ourselves, our families, and communities about the conditions of our family and community members in prison, and to create revolutionary consciousness and encourage the spirit of resistance amongst themselves and our communities. That is, I want to say it again, that the intent, according to Mama Mushama, the intent amongst those of us who commemorated and practiced Black August was to educate ourselves, our families, and communities about the conditions of our family and community members in prison, and to create revolutionary consciousness. Come on. And to create revolutionary consciousness and encourage the spirit of resistance amongst those in our communities. She continues, this was in order to unify and to continue and grow a strong prison movement to resist and change the conditions in the prisons and the conditions in our communities that were feeding the growth of our people in the prisons and the very real growth of the prison industrial complex. It is still a time to embrace the principles of unity, self-sacrifice, political education, physical fitness, and or training in martial arts, resistance, and spiritual renewal, while unifying, organizing, and creating strategies and science for freedom for those family and community members behind the walls, our political prisoners, and stop the program to have millions of our young people on the classroom to prison pipeline. Black August has grown from only commemorating fallen resistors of the prison movement to bringing awareness to the necessity of prison reform from practitioners, scholars, and clergy like Michelle Alexander and Nakia Robert of Abolitionist Sanctuary. We are called then to be concerned about members of our communities who are unjustly tortured and imprisoned. Let me let you sit. Let me let you sit with it for a minute. Yeah. Yeah. I want to let that sit for a second. As I go pull up this graphic. What we are called, not to personal salvation. Because that is clearly not what the writer is speaking to. The writer is addressing a collective crisis. And the crisis was not coming from what any one individual was experiencing, but the crisis was coming from what the collective was experiencing, because the collective was resisting, through their belief, their following of the way, which was opposite of the Roman government. Then the collective is now resisting. And in that resisting, they are bringing harm upon themselves, or at least persecution upon upon themselves, and some of them can no longer take it. And what the writer is saying, if you even go back to chapter 10, where the writer says, hey, hold up. Remember in the beginning when you were first in darkened. Remember when you first received the awareness, you were excited to be at the protest. You were excited to speak truth to power. You were excited. You even gave up all of your possessions. You even gave up your possessions, and then you yourself moved into, excuse me. You yourself found yourself imprisoned, and you had no problem with it because you understood that the reward was greater. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. I need to see some folks with me. I need to see some folks are with me. Yeah, 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 yeah. Mhm. It is about the collective crises. This imperative, though, listen, this collective crisis here in the text, this collective crisis, and even the call for us to remember those of our comrades, and not our allies, but our comrades who remain on lockdown, some decades upon decades after their original sentence has ended. Those political prisoners, those like Mutulu Shakur, who was only offered a compassion release after having served the term, received a compassion release that he might come home to transition with his family. Friends. I need us to shift. Listen, I need us to shift from this very individualized, very materialistic, very capitalistic, very kind of transactional practice of Christianity, which is that if you believe with all of your heart, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, that somehow when you transition, there will be no more suffering, there will be no more pain, that you then will have some kind of authority, some kind of power in your life where you can then slay these individual demons that come to attack only you. The problem with that is it voids us of a radical communal responsibility. The problem with Jesus being only your Lord and personal Savior is that it doesn't engage, it doesn't fully allow the fruition for which Jesus came to fulfill, not for just you, but for society, for the kingdom, for the reigndom of God that is at hand. My goodness, my goodness, my goodness. And so, what then this chapter 13 of verse 3 is saying to us is this imperative to not forget about those of our community members that are on lockdown. The imperative, friends, according to the commentator, is not satisfied by a moment of silence in assembly. It is not satisfied solely by intercessory prayer. Now, hear me what I say. I didn't say that you should stop praying, that you should stop interceding. I'm saying that this notion that we should not forget those who are being tortured and or mistreated cannot simply be handled by prayer. It cannot simply be handled by let's pause during Sunday service and have a moment of silence. O'Shea Sibley, I would imagine, it might still be alive, I imagine, if we would stop always saying we gonna pray about it. If we would put our feet to the ground, if we would get our fingers to type in legislators, if we would get start gathering people around tables, old school evangelism, baby, sending out tracts for right reasons. Friends, what would it mean for us to take our evangelical missions, if you will, a step beyond this notion that if one knew where they would spend their eternity, would they make the right decision when they are experiencing eternity right now in the here and now? My. It says again that this kind of moment, this kind of regard, this kind of concern is not satisfied by a moment of silence. It is not satisfied only by intercessory prayer. My goodness, rather, according to Craddock, that remembering then involves full solidarity with those in prison and those suffering at the hands of others. Remembering involves full solidarity with those in prison and those suffering at the hands of others. Full solidarity. Yeah. Full solidarity. No pick and choose. Full solidarity. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of the commentaries says that it was the responsibility of the community to make sure that those in prison were fed and had clothes. But see, part of this post-traumatic slave syndrome and part of what Western Euro-centered white supremacist capitalistic practices do is make it all about me, and me again. And because also some of us who are experiencing justice fatigue, because we are constantly on the line, we can become numb from this. But here's also what I want to say is that there is a respectability around the fight for human rights. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. There is a certain kind of respectability. The civil rights movement is a respectability movement. Say what you want and say what you will. That those who fought and stood in the Southern civil rights movement were good church going people. They dressed the part, and we know they dressed the part because we know that part of the reason why Claudette Colvin, who was actually the first person to not get off the bus in Montgomery, Alabama, who was a teenager and who was pregnant and who was dark skinned from a particular class, a lower socioeconomic class status. The reason why she was not used for the campaign is because those who were organizing the movement did not believe that she was a viable candidate for all of the reasons that I just mentioned. But Miss Rosa, God bless her soul, who was a lighter hue, who worked in industry, and not only because she had long been a part of the NAACP and did other things in civil rights. So not that she didn't have the skill to do it, but they were looking for a respectable looking acting candidate. Martin Luther King was a kind of, at least in front of the public, was a respectable, I say, a respectable candidate. Yeah. So that when Kwame Nkrumah, formerly Stokely Carmichael, comes with this particular radicalism around Black Power, offered. But I know him as Baba Mukasa, and so his name is escaping me right now. Ricks, brother Ricks. That's his last name, but his taken on continental African name is Baba Mukasa. So when Baba Mukasa says Black Power, and Stokely Carmichael, known as Kwame Nkrumah, y'all know what I'm trying to say. When he grabs Black Power, then the Black Power movement moves in a different direction, wherein they begin to defy and deny this notion of respectability. My goodness. As the Black Panther Party comes on, as the Black Panther Party is moving and grooving in Oakland, California, and other parts, and begins to move across the nation bearing arms, as folks women and men are beginning to raise up within the Black Panther Party, the Black Panther Party, with its issues as the result of COINTELPRO and others, begins to have some serious cracks in it. But out of the Black Panther Party, because of a difference of political view, comes movements like the Black Liberation Army, the BLA, the Black Guerrilla Family, as well as the new African RG, with the New African People for something something something, and later the Malcolm X grassroots movement founded by Mutulu Shakur. Why am I mentioning all of these? Because the latter, in terms of this sort of radical Black freedom movement, aren't those that are less talked about. That today, for some of you, is your first day ever hearing about Black August. And while Black August is not the same as Black History Month, some of you, this is the first time you have ever heard about Black August, because there is a way in which we still perform this respectability as Black Christians, as Black church folk, who then would not celebrate the lives of fallen people who died, who were murdered as a result of trying to liberate their comrades out of a courtroom. We don't see that as being respectable. But a lynching is a lynching is a lynching, friends. There is no hierarchy of respectability on lynching. Yeah. So here we are then, lifting up. The whole point then is for us to recognize that there are still political prisoners who are on lockdown right now as a result of their vow, of their political view, of their actions to liberate Black people. My goodness, today that you never heard their names mentioned in a church. Ain't nobody ever come and brought it to you. And no church pause. Well, there is one that I've seen on Facebook recently this month that's having a whole Black August celebration, commemoration. But that also, we don't want Black August to become commercialized and commodified. We want it to remain a commemorative tradition where we then continue to think through the ways in which this system constantly places its foot on the necks of Black and brown people, and the ways that we must continue to resist. And so there are practices that we do for Black August. I held them up. I'll pull them up again for those of you who are saying, well, Dr. Sampson, what is it? What do we do? People like Ronnie Galvin, people like my own spouse, Derek Young, who are engaging. Some of you are doing 75 hard, soft, medium, y'all doing, these exercise movements. Some of you taking August as a reset, but I want to invite you to politicize your movements. I want to invite you to engage in this practice of Black August, to fast, to study, to train, and to fight against injustice. I want to invite you to do such, to get yourself in a group. And if you can't find a group, to engage these practices on your own until you're able to find you a collective where you are reading, where you are understanding, where you are acknowledging, where you are lifting up. Because here's the thing, friends, our collective progress, our communal liberation is dependent upon how well we can remember. That is how we can remember our stories of survival, our strategies for overcoming, and our significations on dismantling the master's house with different tools. Our collective progress, our communal liberation is inextricably linked to our joint humanity. But how do we manage not to become so dragged down by disappointment? Come on, Melville, what are you saying? How do we manage not to remain disillusioned and disgusted and divisive? We become humanists. Yay, Jesus. Oh my God, today. What the Christian preacher just said, we become humanists. Brad Braxton and Anthony Penn have a new book out about that. I haven't even cracked it. I haven't even opened it. I ordered it. I have it on my Audible, waiting to listen. I haven't even opened it. But we become humanist. We pronounce and practice Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a form of humanism which can be expressed in the statement, quote, I am because we all are. It is an African philosophy that places emphasis on being self through others, that I can only be myself if others have the opportunity to be themselves. Sankich and Sankich highlight three maxims of Ubuntuism, and I'm going to illuminate two. One, that to be human is to affirm one's humanity by recognizing the humanity of others, and on that basis, establish respectful human relations with them. Two, if and when one is faced with a decisive choice between wealth and preservation of the life of another human being, then one should opt for the preservation of life of another human being. Oh my. What she say? Let's come back to it. If and when one is faced with a decisive choice between wealth and preservation of the life of another human being, then one should opt for the preservation of life of the other human being. That the essence of being human is to affirm and recognize the humanity of others. Well, let's go back to it. Hold on. 1 second. That the essence of being human is to affirm and recognize the humanity of others. My goodness, what does that say? Remember those who are in prison as though you were in prison with them. Remember those who are being tortured as though you yourself were being tortured. Friends, guess what that is? That is Ubuntu. That the Hebrew writer was inviting us to be humanists. The Hebrew writer is inviting us to recognize the humanity of others. And when we recognize the humanity of others, when we begin by recognize our own humanity and spreading it throughout our collective, it is possible that we might transform our collective. It is possible that we won't fall into the trappings of these social constructs of gender that really divide our communities, so much so that members of our community believe that they have the right to take the life of other members of our community because of their sexuality, because they are simply dancing and voguing on the street. What that tells me is that they cannot see themselves, they cannot identify their own humanity. Ubuntu means that the spirit of Ubuntu means that we all have to see each other in one another, that is the crux and the core of the way. That this Christology might just have been a tad bit too divine. That it was short on humanity. And what the writer is inviting us is to get a little bit of more humanity in our system, get a little bit more humanity in our practice, get a little bit more humanity in our theology, get a little bit more humanity in our outlook. And when we get, my goodness, and when we get that humanity, we will remember these names. We will remember still on lockdown, Mumia Abu Jamal. We will remember still on lockdown, Imam Jamil Abdullah Alameen, aka H-Rap Brown. We will remember Abdul Aziz. We will remember Joseph Bowen. We will remember Veronza Bowers. We will remember Kojo Bamani Sabubu. We will remember Fred Muhammad Burton. We will remember Osho Blanco. We will remember Malik El-Amin. We will remember Reverend Joy Powell. Joy Powell, a pastor and a consistent activist against police brutality, violence, and oppression in her community. Reverend Joy Powell was warned by the Rochester Police Department that she was a target because of her speaking out against corruption, against the police brutality, and against the police. As a result, Reverend Joy was accused and convicted of first-degree burglary and assault. She was captured in 2007 and sentenced to life plus 16 years. I encourage you to go to the jerichomovement.com, where you can find the addresses of our aunts, our uncles, our fathers, our sisters, our brothers, our cousins, our community members that are on lockdown, and it has their addresses, and you can write them letters, and you can send them encouragement. You can let them know that they are not forgotten. We speak the name of Reverend Joy Powell. The Spirit of Ubuntu requires us to remember. I want to walk back to the Republic of New Africa. Founded in 1968, a Black nationalist organization and Black separatist movement in the United States, popularized by Black militant groups. Here's the thing, though, and I got to end. We got to go over to the clearing. Let me just end this way, because what Black folk will talk a lot about are the Black militant groups, but what we don't talk enough about, and we're going to go over to the clearing on this, is this movement that I just read about called the New Apostolic Reformation. The New Apostolic Reformation, which is the Reformation which many are a part of, who stormed the Capitol. Yes, RG, if we had a durable spirit of Ubuntu among us, there would be no political prisoners. And that's that on that. A beautiful way to end. Ashe, Ashe. For those of you that are coming over to the clearing, we welcome you. Give me just a second to go and make sure that there have been no new subscribers that need to get in, to check my message, to make sure that everyone has our link. For those of you who are coming over to the open church this morning, please go back to the top of your comments. Make sure you have all comments on so that you can see the meeting ID, the Zoom link for the open church at 10 a.m. For those of you who want to subscribe, that subscription link, it'll say Buy Stripe, is also on there. For those of you who are not coming, but you still want to sow into this ministry, you can do so by Venmo, which we are greatly appreciative. Ashe. And we are now in the swing of fulfilling our obligations to support 4 Black women who are attending historically Black colleges and universities with a book stipend of $500. So we invite you to give, that we might be able to be a blessing to them. You could do so by Venmo, or you could do so by using Pink Robe Chronicles. We do not use Cash App. You can also use my Zelle, which is drmelvasampson@gmail.com. drmelvasampson@gmail.com. Ashe. Listen, until next time, until next week, continue to stay up. Go ahead and research Black August.